get started.
All right, welcome to the Brier City Council Workshop, February 1. First item of business is a review of January 25 City Council meeting. Any issues with that? Okay, hearing none. Second, reappointment of Tom HANSON to the Planning Commission. He's been a fairly long time planning commissioner. He's willing to serve again. Any issues with that?
No, he's a good guy. Hey, by the way, Dennis says he's trying to get in.
Oh,
Yeah, he's asking me if I'm having issues, and I'm like, no, I'm not having issues. I'm open. You're having issues.
okay. So anything on Tom HANSON? No, I think it's fine. Review and discuss bids for HVAC unit replacements. As you know, what was that?
Here comes Steve.
Oh, okay. As you know, we have multiple HVAC units and they're all slowly dying off. And so we're just replacing them as they come. Steve, how many units do we have?
8.
Yep, 8 units total, Mayor.
Okay. So this is just going to be an ongoing expense. We can't get the Freon, whatever. Yeah, these will be more efficient, newer. And so any issues with that?
Well, the bid was for 1 unit, but I'm assuming that's on top of the one that we didn't install last year. So we're doing 2.
Right.
Yeah, so if I could speak to that,
Yeah.
we're looking for 2 additional. We got the one that was funded last year, and with the supply chain that's been on back order. We recently got the furnace and that was installed last Friday, but we're still waiting on the heat pump. So half the system's in from that one. And then that was a 3-ton unit. This is an additional request for 2 5-ton units.
Okay, so this is a total of 3 then. The one that's already in process. I didn't know for sure that we had that paid for.
Yes.
Okay, so we need 2 more.
Correct.
Hi, Steve. Don Moran here. I read through the bid. Nicely done. I noticed again that you stated that we had a supply issue. The bid is requesting, I guess, an authorization from us within a defined period of time. Does that mean that the product that they're going to provide is now available, or will we be subject to some supply chain issue yet again? I think they wanted signature on with these terms if we signed immediately. And I'm just wondering, do we have a way of going back to them and saying, this is predicated on you're actually delivering it on the date that we wish?
Yeah, I just know with the supply chain, there's no guarantee on that. And they're talking, possibly more restrictions on the trucking industry, and it might get worse before it gets better. So I think that's out of the vendor's control. As far as I know, he's going to guarantee that price that we signed for. I'd have to confirm that, but that is my assumption.
Yeah, I would hope that if the supply issue doesn't push it out, that we would be subject to an additional upcharge for a increase in the inflationary price of that equipment. Okay, good.
And the contract does say 1 unit, but I'm assuming it's just 2 at that same price.
Yes, that's price each. So yeah, it'd be 2 of them at that price.
And when we looked at this back in August, the 5-ton price was 19,900. Has it gone up about 3,000 since August?
I would have to compare. I know this was the latest that we just received, so I know stuff is going up. So I think that'd be fair to say, but I would have to compare them to verify that.
Okay.
All right.
The difference, Steve, that the one from August was a 4-ton and this is for 2 5-tons.
The one for August had a 4-ton in there, but that was 18,900. The 5 tons were 19,900.
The one we ended up deciding to replace, though, I believe, was the 410,
3-ton,
that's a
actually.
three,
Yeah,
yeah.
310.
yeah,
Okay.
3-ton.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else on that? Okay, if not, moving on. Police car, actually specifically the police chief's vehicle. The 2003 Ford Taurus has issues, even though it is low mileage. And not only does it have issues with moisture and stuff, lights and sirens are outdated and not very visible. Our chief,
Aren't they like on the visor?
yeah, I think they're up the top of the window.
Yeah, they're not
They're not exactly.
not a light bar.
Yeah. Oh, speaking of the chief, there he
They
is.
just showed up.
Hey, hello, everybody.
Hello.
Where are the lights on the Taurus?
Yes, sorry, I missed your introduction as Paula brought me in as a participant. It goes into another window. The lights in the Taurus right now there's two like 1 inch by ½ inch lights in the grill. And then there is this old school flip down on the passenger side visor that you have to flip down like the old Kojak days.
That's why I was saying lights on the visor.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then there's a very tiny Dominator strip that's on the third eye. And I think there's like faint quarter strobes on each corner. And probably, I think the wigwags might work, but yeah, it's sparsely lit up for response use.
Okay,
Does
so
it have one of those domes that you put on top?
That's
You know what?
Starsky and Hutch. Let's make sure we keep our.
He doesn't get to be that cool. He just gets the
That would be
Kojak one.
awesome.
I like the Kojak reference personally. I'm digging it.
Yeah,
Telly Savalas is cool.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
and so actually this is a vehicle that our chief uses for commuting, is going to be, yeah. So it's important, should he need to get somewhere, that he have the proper vehicle. And so he's got a vehicle in here that he's suggesting. Any questions?
Question on the package. So you noted the problem with the lights on the current police car and the siren. When I was looking through the option list, it didn't look like there was a selection for lights and sirens within the option list. And is that something that comes with the car? It didn't look like it on the website, but perhaps it does.
That is correct. So these cars are purchased through the enterprise services. So they are surplus cars that were not purchased through everybody in the state bidding. And so this particular car, you are correct, has no light package in it whatsoever, no crash bars or spotlights or anything like that. It's designed for a undercover or a command officer's vehicle. So it's leftover, but it's designed to be what they call plug and play. So it's harness ready for whatever type of lighting package or radio. So it's literally, so you don't have to like take down all the headliners and everything. That's kind of way that the police industry has been manufacturing the cars. So whatever police department packages that a department would want, everything electrically is sitting right there. So you don't have to tear everything apart.
Okay, so is there an additional expenditure that will take place to kind of equip this later?
Absolutely. I wanted to do that after, and I think it's going to be more likely well within the mayor's signing authority for the extra, the lights that would be going in it. We're in the process. I'm not sure if you guys are aware, in Snohomish County and King County, actually statewide, of what they call the rebanding of all the 800 megahertz radios.
Yeah.
So some of our cars right now, today, in fact, are at the Martha Lake Fire Department. and they are all getting the new mobile radios and antennas installed in them. So, and of course, that was free, part of the rebanding process, or mostly free. But it was kind of a 1-for-1. You trade in one and you get the mobile radio in its stead. So it's just upgrading the radio system for the entire county, or actually the state. So we wouldn't have to purchase a radio for it, but we would have to purchase the light package that would, per the state, be required for an emergency vehicle.
I think you're also planning on the laptop mount and things like that. Or-
No, I'm not going to go for a laptop mount or a cage or anything like that.
So Chief, you mentioned this is a surplus vehicle. Is this a new vehicle or does it have miles on it?
It's got 0 miles. It's just a leftover 2021.
Okay. And then maybe to you, Paula, I see the Taurus been averaging about 4,000 miles a year since 2003. See a trade-in value on that is maybe worth $1,000 to $2,000 at most. So will we actually achieve some kind of credit for that, maybe trading the Taurus in for the new vehicle? Will the dealer give us something in value in return?
You don't generally trade those in. We surplus them and we send them to auction.
Auction? Okay, all right.
I think Val should buy it. She has 2 sons.
I was gonna say, if we could get a few more animals, it could be the Brier Zoo at this point.
Yeah. Well, I'm just wondering if there's any way to squeeze a few dollars out of it to offset the cost of outfitting the new vehicle as well. And at least getting it off our books with some depreciated value. I assume it's probably got zero value on our depreciation at this point.
Do we,
Yeah.
Paulo, we take the hit in the year. We don't actually depreciate our vehicles.
We do not.
Costing.
No.
just
We are
say straight
we are
up.
cash basis. We
Yeah.
do not
Okay.
do depreciation and all of that kind of stuff.
Okay, all right.
I was going to tell you, I could have saved you a lot of money because our friend Steve Smith sent me the K5 Blazer that you guys got rid of in 2020. And because I'm such a Longmire fan, I would have used that for my Chiefs car with my 3030 sitting in there and my cowboy hat. I'm just saying, I could have saved you a lot of money.
Hey,
You might
put
have
it
wanted
out-
to look to how many rodents were in it before you commit to that.
Yeah. yeah.
Well, we do have a horse riding rink out front, Chief, if you want to hook your stallion up instead and forget the car altogether.
Okay.
That's right. Okay.
Just maybe a process question on this too. I know this wasn't possible with the old Chiefs car, but is this something, is this something that may get cycled through the fleet after some time, or is it destined to always be a Chiefs car? How does that work?
Well, how I have worked the process of command vehicles, because they don't get as many miles as a patrol car. They don't get worked as hard as a patrol car does. So they will last longer. You just run that risk of being out of warranty, which that car will last well past the 3 or 36. But they are maintained much better because it's one driver, it's me. And like I said, I don't drive a patrol car like I did when I was 21. And I don't go on all the calls that everybody does all the time. So it could be something that if it's still in good working condition, that we could transfer over into a patrol car one day. It's very possible.
Okay, yeah, because it seems like easier miles, and you know, maybe that's the process for getting a new chief car is to move that one over into patrol and put some harder miles on it after a while. Just a
Right.
thought.
It could also be depending on the mayor's policy, is maybe it's one that could be transferred over to other staff if it's still a good working car as used for public works or city staff to go to training or do the jobs within the city.
I know the other chief car had occasionally been, it was rare, but if there was a jaunt that was needed somewhere, I know I've ridden in that car and it wasn't the chief driving a couple times.
Yeah. And as a bonus, the chief is agreed to stay. As long as the car runs, he'll stay and work for us in Brier. So,
Absolutely.
there you
Can we
go.
get that in writing? I don't think that was in his contract.
We had a-
Yeah,
we
you
had
just
a-
gotta
that
watch
was a-
out though for that day. It just somehow ended up a tree, so we need.
That was that was kind of a handshake deal. So.
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions? Excellent. We'll move that forward to our meeting. Moving on to proposed changes, Title 17 zoning divisions, general housekeeping, including clarification.
Here comes Jennifer.
All right.
Dennis has continued to try to get into the meeting. He apparently can't, and unfortunately, I cannot help him from here. I've told him what to do, and
Okay, well, thank you for trying. All right, Jennifer, welcome to the meeting.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Everyone hear me okay?
Yes, perfectly.
All right, good. So this is a continuation of the discussions we've had about zoning. We continue to work through changes to this section. It seems like every time we show it to somebody, somebody else has a question. So that's why we continue to look at this. So the attachment that you have in the packet has all the changes that we've been working on for this section. So there are some things you've seen before at prior meetings, but we did add several new things, and so I'll highlight those and then we can talk about any of the changes. So under 1704-040 definitions, we are proposing to update the definition of impervious surfaces so it matches the definition in the stormwater manual. Adding definitions for corner and flag lots, which weren't there previously, and then clarifying the definition of front yard. Under general provisions, there were a number of changes. Most of those were minor wording, but adding definitions and modifying the section to clarify the terminology and definitions for non-conforming buildings, structures, and uses. Under 1724-010 use districts, adding municipally owned buildings and structures as an allowed use in the residential zone. And then also propose to add parks and recreational areas for the private use of residents of subdivisions as a conditional use. We already have several of these that were created through previous subdivisions, but they aren't technically in our code as an allowed use. So just a bit of housekeeping there, should that ever become an issue. And then under single family residential 1729-010, adding a procedure for how you would determine a front yard setback for flag lots. And then in the neighborhood business zone, updating the terminology and definitions throughout that section. And then for neighborhood business zone, clarifying how setback procedures and requirements are for those properties in that zone. So hopefully we will get through these changes and then bring them back to you for adoption of the ordinance in, I think, the March meeting.
Thank you, Jennifer. Questions?
I had one. Line 226. Are we taking out secondary ADUs have to be occupied by family members?
Yes, that is what we're recommending. My understanding and that is that the council made a determination a number of years ago that they understood that over time people who maybe had once proposed a secondary dwelling unit for a family member, that was no longer going to be a requirement because people's circumstances change and they've invested in the construction of the SDU.
Yeah.
So that's how it's been interpreted for a number of years, and this would just formalize that change, that policy.
And then line 13, this is just my
213
understanding of,
or 13?
huh?
13?
Line 13.
Okay.
Isn't state of Washington, isn't state capitalized in that case? You're defined. I've always seen it capitalized when you write it that way. The state of Washington.
I will consult my grammar experts on that.
Yeah,
It's late in
Just
the
a-
evening for me to make a ruling on grammar, not my expertise. but-
it's a small item.
Yeah.
Yes,
Um,
it should be.
Yeah, I would
Okay.
think.
Yeah, that definition has been there since, another staff member might say Moby Dick was a minnow, so. I'll do a global search on that to see if that might be in some of the other definitions. too.
Yeah, it runs throughout the document.
Okay.
Jennifer.
Other questions?
Yeah, Jennifer, Don Moran here. Section 1708.015, definitions of non-conforming building type. There's a lot of red font there. I was going through that and I'm wondering a little about what's sort of generated the revisions here. Is there pushback or some identification of more frequent spotting or identification of non-conforming structures within Brier for which we're reacting and responding?
No, we are just trying to, some of you may or may not know this, but a lot of the code in Brier's code has come from, been kind of cobbled together like an old house. So we're just trying to clean some of the language up and use terminology that's more consistent or less confusing. To my knowledge, we haven't had like an enforcement issue on these things recently that's driven the changes, but just
Okay.
as we go through it and see something that sticks or causes heartburn when we read it,
Yeah.
trying to fix those.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else?
Line 503 regarding the parks. Can you just clarify what's intended by the private use of residents of subdivisions? And what park is in this class?
Well, there is one at the Sunbrook subdivision, Sunbrook. And then there's one that was recently approved as part of the preliminary plat for the Estate of Dreams. They proposed, that subdivision was approved about 6 years ago and they let their application lapse and it's been reapproved. And so they are proposing a stormwater vault and they're going to put, just a small number of recreation. I think it's just going to mostly amount to like benches and shrubs, but it's not going to come under the purview of the city, and Public Works will not be responsible for any of the maintenance of those facilities. And that's the case with Sunbrook Park as well. So they take care of all the maintenance and, enforce whatever policies and practices in those areas.
Okay. Has that been an issue at all?
Has what been an issue? The enforcement of it, or the fact
Yeah, I
that
was just
they're
curious.
not allowed in our code and we have them? To my knowledge, Eric's not here, but I recall him telling there was one issue where some kids were trying to use the Sunbrook Park and it created some angst, but it was resolved. And to my knowledge, that's the only time that was an issue, but
Also, you don't want any, this is good because you don't want discrepancies. Does the city own it? Does they not own it? Are they liable in a situation? So when you have one of these, it's really to the homeowners association and such that has the responsibility and liability versus the cities. So I think it's a good one to call out.
Yep. Thank you.
Right. Anything else?
Interesting.
so if any of you have any further thoughts on these in the next, days that you want to shoot my direction, be happy to take a look at them or talk them over with you.
Jennifer, I was just wondering, just knowing of something else that had come up a few years ago, the F500, line 500, so right above the Parks one. So is there a definition of major traffic streets? Is there a state, is there some kind of uniform code or something? This is the definition of what a major street is, traffic wise, et cetera.
That's in our comp plan.
Yeah, that's what I was where I didn't go back to look at it. So so we do have that, we use the wording major traffic streets in that term.
We use the word major traffic streets in the, and we don't use the term or define it arterial. So this is making it consistent. This was something the planning commission suggested when we took a look at this last week with them.
That sounds good.
Either define arterial or reference what we already have in our plans.
Okay. One last time, anything? All right, thank you, Jennifer. And, as she said, if there's some things that you think of or see, feel free to contact her. Just as an aside, for Jennifer, for all of you to know. So Mr. Smith provides to me, Steve provides every Friday a document showing what they did the previous week. And I've asked Jennifer to do the same, to let myself and the liaison, which is Mr. Marley, know what she's been working on. Obviously, she has to deal with the development issues that are pressing, that come to her, that need to be, are time sensitive. Beyond that, we have things like this, code update issues, that she has a list of things that she feels are priorities. So in the near future, Mr. Marley and I are, because she's sharing those with he and I, we're going to go over those with her, just so that we get a sense of, to make sure that we agree, and then maybe eventually draw you into the council in the conversation, where we'll say, these are the priorities that we see in the order of that we're going to be doing, handling them, and just getting your feedback, see if you agree that our priorities are right with respect to the revisions, cleaning up of our ordinances and our code. So that's what's happening with that. All right. Thank you, Jennifer.
Sure, thank you.
All right, moving on to snow and ice removal. And again, I want to thank Steve for being here with us. Obviously, as you all recall, when we had our snow incident this year, and Steve's promised me there will be no more snow this year. So that's good to know. We had
some tonight.
Steve was unfortunately out sick, but he worked from home, and then we had some staff members out sick. So it turned out to be calling on a few people to do as best they could with the equipment that we had. And I appreciate, and our police officers helped out too, as they could. So I just want to reiterate my appreciation for Steve and his staff that worked long hours. And we got a lot of feedback from the community, voicemails and emails with respect to specific problems. And that's why tonight we are reviewing this information that Steve has come up with. There are lots of options. They all come with a cost, financial cost, a cost to our streets, a cost to the vehicles, a cost as far as space that's required to store or whatever. And of course, anytime you apply something to a street, there's some liability if you don't do it right. And there's of course environmental concerns. And that's why I thought we would have this broader conversation about the options. And I'll let Steve take it from here.
Okay, great. Thanks, Mayor. I'm going to try to share my screen here, so we'll see how that goes. I'll just bring the document up.
Yeah, now you should be able to do it.
Okay. Is everybody seeing that okay?
Nope,
Not
it
yet.
hasn't come up.
Okay.
There we go.
Okay. Now I think-
Cool.
Nice.
We're seeing the pictures of the
Okay.
four wheeling.
I got to figure out how to swap that then.
It's a sweet Polaris.
Yeah, that's my daughter in it there. Friend's machine. So,
Paula, can you hear me?
Yes, Dennis,
Okay, I just want to check. Thank you.
you're welcome.
There we go.
okay, and I'm going to try to swap these here. First time doing this, bear with me here. Let's see. Here.
From current slide, you were there. Up there along the left from current slide.
Okay.
Should click on that. It should just pop into view mode.
Okay. I got two monitors, so it's on my other monitor. The
Oh,
view
okay.
mode.
Okay.
So I'm just trying to figure out how to swap those here.
Doesn't matter how many PowerPoints you've done, we all screw it up, Steve. You're good.
Yeah, yeah. If anyone knows how to swap
Always an
screens
issue.
here, this was kind of my fear. View, don't see it there. Okay. I think I'm getting close here.
You just made it go black.
If you go up to the top there where it says display settings, there's a little
Yeah.
drop down. Yeah, click on that and now duplicate slideshow. That should, there you
Wow,
go.
thanks, Dawn. There we go.
Yeah, I'm not as dumb as I look.
Thank you for the help. Fumble through this here. So yeah, so kind of put together this information here, did a bunch of research and some of my past knowledge working with deicers. So a little introduction here is obviously tonight we'll be talking about available products to combat snow and ice. Currently, the city is using snow plows that utilize rubber cutting edges and primarily spreading coarse sand to provide traction. There has recently been concerns, as you're aware, from Brier residents brought to the attention of staff and city council regarding the service level of response to snow and ice resulting from the most recent snow and ice event beginning December 26th. During a snow and ice event, we often hear that Brier streets are not as clear as streets in neighboring jurisdictions. As city staff and leaders, we try to explain that a couple of the main reasons for this is that Brier simply does not have the same amount of vehicles traveling our roadways, which aid in the warming and assist in the melting process. The second main reason is that this current time, Brier Public Works does not utilize the use of anti-icing or de-icing products, which most of the surrounding jurisdictions do use. There are several different types of deicer products available that are available in either a solid granule or liquid form. There are also many different application methods. All of the available products do have some cause for concern when it comes to corrosiveness, impacts to people, pets, wildlife, vehicles, and the environment. The standard utilized by many surrounding jurisdictions is to select a product from the qualified product list, the QPL, which has done extensive research performed by the Pacific Northwest Snow Fighters in partnership with Clear Roads. This is considered to be the best management practice in the industry, and it gives the mission of Clear Roads there. When considering the use of deicer products, there are many other factors need to be considered, such as quantities needed, how to purchase, storage, secondary containment, overhead cover, application equipment, etc. The information contained in this document is Brier Public Works Department research that looks at de-icing materials, purchasing options, storage, secondary containment, application equipment, calibration equipment, types of road treatment, and types of de-icers. The research was collected from several online websites, product information from vendors, discussion with surrounding jurisdictions, and general knowledge of staff from previously working with anti-icing and de-icing products and applications for several years. So we'll get into the materials here. So several different ways to purchase, everything from the homeowner quantities up to the state DOT level. The most cost-effective way is to purchase snow and ice control products off of the enterprise contract. Basically, that's the same contract service that the chief was talking about for the vehicles that the cities are able to piggyback on. So all the products that are on that state contract are on that QPL list of the qualified product list by the Pacific Northwest Snow Fighters. So there's some of the, here's all the items that are available in our region, the Northwest region off that contract. I've highlighted the commonly used products by surrounding jurisdictions, and that would be LTI is the service that would offer the solid de-icing product, which is road salt, calcium chloride. I'm sorry, that's the road salt. And then Envirotech for the liquid, which is the calcium chloride. So both the solid and liquid products are sold by the ton. So this kind of gives a breakdown here, obviously on the solid products, 2,000 pounds for a ton. The minimum you're able to order is 30 tons, because that's the typical truckload. For the liquid, 5,000 gallons is the minimum. I did find out they'll let us go as low as ordering 4,500 gallons off the contract, but you're paying the trucking on the on that full 5,000. And then just the note down below that there's approximately 178 gallons of liquid per ton. And kind of explains a little bit about paying the trucking if you ordered less. So this breaks it down here on the pricing. So for the solid salt products through LTI, different prices depending on how far in advance you order it. So they typically guarantee these delivery dates. So the further out you order it, the less expensive it is. So you're looking at about $132 a ton for the 30-day delivery. Then on the calcium chloride, the liquid product, they just have the 3-day and 7-day there. And the 7-day is $242.92 a ton. I did request an estimate from them, and they gave me an example of a 25-ton delivery, approximately 4,500 gallons. So that would be that very minimal amount that they would be able to send over to us. And the pre-tax total was $6,073, which worked out to $1.35 a gallon. So, you know, I wondered if that big option was something that Brier needed, those big volumes. I know a lot of the surrounding jurisdictions do that, but they have a lot more lane miles than we do. So I looked at some other options here. So one I looked at was a 55-gallon drum of a calcium chloride product. It was Bare Ground brand, and that was through Northern Tool. And the freight charges actually ended up being more than the product cost. $344 for the product and $440 basically some change for the shipping. So that works out to a high per gallon cost of $14.27, so much more than the state contract. Another option was through Wilbur Ellis. We work with them currently to get our fertilizers, and they have a product which is a magnesium chloride called Meltdown brand. And that comes in a 250-gallon shuttle, and I have a picture of that shuttle later, show you basically a square tank, and $280 a gallon is what that works out to for that 250-gallon shuttle. The other option we have is we currently have what's called a JA account with Washington State Department of Transportation. And we have a purchase limit with them of $12,500 that allows us to buy both the products that we've been discussing, the bulk salt and the calcium chloride with Boost liquid deicer from them at that same state contract pricing. Couple of the downfalls in that is they would need us to pick it up at their facility that's in North Everett on the end of Broadway. And there would be the possibility if they needed to save the product for their own operations that they might deny us. So kind of a summary on the material is there's several types of solid and liquid deicer products available to combat snow and ice. Several of the surrounding jurisdictions are using a combination of calcium chloride with Boost for the liquid and sodium chloride for the rock salt. The most cost-effective way to purchase is off the state contract, but the downside is the minimum quantities are 30 ton of solid and 5,000 of liquid deicer, but they could go to that 4,500. So next we start talking storage. So once again, if we're talking about getting into the large quantities like the surrounding jurisdictions, I'm going to need a large tank to hold all that. So on the enterprise contracts again, they have a contract for the storage tanks. And those range from 5,000 gallons to 10,500. These prices were a little outdated when I called the vendor for this, AG Enterprises over in Cheney, Washington. He didn't have the updated, but he said these were going to be real close, but there is going to be some increase to this. Talking to some of the surrounding jurisdictions, I know one's using a single 8,000 gallon tank. And then I know some others that are using a combination of like some 5,000 gallon tanks, I believe it was. So the thing is when you start getting low on product, you got to be able to take that 5,000 delivery. So people usually choose to have a little room left to play with there so they could take on a full load. In addition to the costs you see here, if you were to go with a large tank, it does require secondary containment. So typically that's constructed of concrete ecology blocks and then has a durable rubber liner. And it kind of describes what that volume has to be, what the standard is there for the secondary containment. The liquid storage tank must
Steve,
also, I'm sorry?
Sorry, is there any considered additional liability or anything like that with our underwriter and such, or is just like as long as you have those storage things in place, if a leak or something were to happen and escape, it would just fall under our current coverage?
Yeah, I think I'd have to refer to Paula for the insurance questions. I just don't have the answer for that.
Steve, what's the shelf life of the different products typically?
Yeah, I've never heard an actual shelf life. I know it's carried over year after year if it's not needed with the surrounding jurisdictions, and that's been my practice. The boost that they talk about in calcium chloride is actually molasses. So that molasses will settle out a little bit from the product. So it's good to once a month circulate the tanks or agitate. They have agitate systems. So go ahead and carry on if there's no more questions, if you don't mind. So
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, the liquid storage tanks also need to be fitted with a 3-inch male pipe cam lock fitting to allow for offloading from the product vendor. So this is basically when they come in with the tanker trucks to something they can offload into your tank. And then a pump system will need to be installed to circulate and load the liquid into our application equipment we'd be using. And what I'm familiar with for this is a 3-inch Honda trash pump. Electric pumps can be utilized. There's different types of pump systems. So this here is that 250 gallon shuttle I was talking about through Wilbur Ellis on the top area here. And then this would be an example of the secondary containment that would be needed for something small scale like this. So, and then I got a price there for ordering that secondary containment. So one of the options. So it's kind of a storage summary is purchasing the large bulk quantities of Deicer product is the most cost-effective method. Although the initial setup poses the need for expensive storage tanks with secondary containment for liquid deicers and storage bins with covers for solid deicer. There are other options of purchasing, such as smaller quantities like the 250-gallon shuttle, and then various bag sizes of solid deicer. The cost is at least double of purchasing bulk product off the state contract. One other option is to purchase from DOT like we talked about, but does have those downfalls. So as we look at the application equipment, up top here is kind of a no frills, what I would consider a parking lot contractor type setup. It's actually really neat. I got a handout on here. This one's offered through Wilbur Ellis as well. But this spray bar here has just a electric RV pump on it. So you could theoretically set one of those shuttles or a tank in the back of a pickup, plumb it to that RV pump. And then it has a key fob to where all you have to do is run a hot 12-volt wire back there, and then the driver operator could actually turn that pump on and off with the key fob. The big downfall to this system is there is liability when putting down deicers, especially if you're going out and pre-treating the bare roads. And this one here has no way of calibrating. About the only way you're going to figure out your calibration on a simple system like this would be to get close by figuring out your gallons per minute your pump's putting out and what speed for your nozzle size to get that desired application rate. But of course, that's going to vary if you move off that speed, if you're slowing down or stopping. So probably a good setup for a parking lot contractor. I wouldn't suggest something like this for a municipality. So down at the bottom is something that I would recommend. It doesn't show the spray bar, but it shows the tank, and you can kind of see the control valves. So basically this is off state contract, gives the price here, and it talks about, has a 3-lane bar. So you can choose to spray in either 1 lane or 3 lanes. Basically, it wings up on the sides to where an example of that would be if you're coming up Poplar and you got the turn lane there before you turn on to 216th. You could be, running your center and then also turn on your left spray bar and hit 2 lanes at once. Or if you get up to wider area on Brier Road, you could turn on the right and get some of that shoulder area if you want to try to claim some road curb to curb, or you could even do 1 pass and hit 2 lanes on any of our other roads. It includes the Raven flow control system. So that's the brain of the system that's going to talk to those valves and tell them when to control the flow. So the idea is you preset that once and the operator never has to touch that. The recommended rates are typically 12 to 15 gallons per lane mile. So you would set that, and that would keep track of how many lanes you've sprayed, how much product you've used, and more importantly, it'd put it down at that recommended rate and keep us out of liability. So this one here, standard, comes with the rope start Honda. You could get the option of electric start, and then they actually recommended we have them install it, not just for the reason of the installation, but they'll also train the operators how to use it. So that's a possibility. And they recommended, or they mentioned, it would probably be about 2 hours to get our truck set up at $120 an hour. So there's that Raven control. And once you turn the master switch on, you have your 3 boom controls there, and you can set 2 different rates. So you got a rate 1 and rate 2. So that you could preset those for that 12 and 15 gallon I was talking about. So summary on the application equipment is when applying deicer products, it's important to apply the proper application rate, especially when anti-icing. That's when you're putting it on the bare pavement. You see those lines. The wrong application rate can cause slippery conditions and subject the city to possible liability. It can be expensive, as shown, to equip a truck with a sprayer that can calibrate application rates. It's typically a GPS controller with electric valves are incorporated into the system. There are less expensive sprayer options available, but precision calibration is not achievable without the electronic equipment incorporated. Then this was just some information I got off of DOT's website. So this talks about the different types of operations. So obviously we got the using a plow and a variety of products to pre-treat and clear roadways, balancing the materials and amount used as the conditions change. So you got the anti-icing. That would be, they would use liquid calcium chloride, sodium chloride, or magnesium chloride. That's when it's applied to the bare road before a storm. Prevents the ice from forming on the road, reduces the amount of snow buildup, and accelerates the snow ice breakup after storm. So basically you're trying to prevent that bond to the road. There's no one magic tool. I mean, it's a tool in the toolbox. It helps, but definitely is not the end all be all in my professional opinion. So there's de-icing next. Solid sodium chloride, salt, is applied to remove a thin layer of snow or ice already on the road. It can be very effective for melting and preventing black ice and freezing rain from adhering to the road. The salt works good. Just like the sand, it does have the tendency to blow off with traffic. So the next category you get into is pre-wetting. So what a lot of jurisdictions have moved to is equipping their sand and salt spreaders with a pre-wetting system, saddle tanks with a spray nozzle that actually wets that solid material coming out and actually helps burn it into that snow and ice layer and prevent cars from blowing it off. So yeah, this explains that it helps stick to the surface better and keeps the solids on the road. Of course, DOT would be working with high-speed traffic to where we're not. And then they've got sand. Well, not used as much in years past. Sand is still used in road treatment, particularly in colder weather. And I think it's important to still use sand, because basically none of these other products are going to provide that immediate traction if we have a slick situation. So I know a lot of entities are doing a mix, mixing some salt with the sand. Others have went to straight salt to basically for cleanup purposes. I do see some downfalls in that, just because out of all of these products, I would say that sodium chloride is going to be your most corrosive, the rock salt. If you read all the disclaimers on it, it's basically going to tell you not to put it on any concrete that hasn't cured for at least a year. Any concrete surfaces that are poor quality, you'll notice pitting and flaking and all sorts of issues with it. And I've even seen this on some of the asphalt roads. You look at some of the surrounding cities and you see a lot of the potholes. Sure, that might be the water getting down and just freezing in between those lifts of asphalt, but all these products do speed up that thawing process, the freeze thaw process. And I think that has an effect to create more of the damage to the roadways. So here's the 6 common categories of deicers we've been talking about through the whole presentation. So you got the sodium chloride rock salt, gives the effectiveness of 15 or above. It can be considered a liquid deicer. Some jurisdictions actually create their own salt brine, have specialized equipment that they're turning that into a liquid and spraying that on the road. You may see that white residue on those lines in some of those jurisdictions. I know one that I visited in the past was City of SeaTac that was doing that. Then calcium chloride down to -20 Fahrenheit. It's most often stored as a liquid, can be mixed with rock salt to increase the salt's ability to penetrate through snow and ice. So that would be that pre-treatment. Then there's a few others, not as commonly used, but they have their place: magnesium chloride and potassium chloride. And then CMA, which is calcium magnesium acetate, and potassium acetate. I would say probably the most common, like I said in the beginning, would be that calcium chloride with Boost. So that completes the slideshow.
So thank you, Steve. Obviously, there's a lot of information to absorb here, and there's pluses and minuses. And I guess what's really hard about this is to get our arms wrapped around the costs. Could you talk a little bit, Steve, about how much sand we go through and what that costs us, including the cost to put it down and then of course the cost to pick it up? Do you have any idea what that would be roughly?
Yeah, research I've done before, it's real comparable to the salt costs. We're paying basically 20 yards a ton for the sand, to where I think it was 132 for the salts. By the time you pay a street sweeper operator to clean it up, paying the disposal for haul off, obviously there's going to be additional cleanup in our catch basins.
I mean,
I think it's
$20 per ton. You said 20 yards per ton? What was it?
$20. Yeah,
All
I
right.
apologize.
All right.
So, yeah, they're real comparable, but it provides that benefit of traction, and also that the salt has more of an impact on, like I was talking about, the roadway, the equipment, the application equipment. If you look at vehicles on the East Coast, that salt, it'll take a toll on vehicles, take a toll on the application equipment. So pros and cons with everything. So that's why kind of looking for some guidance from the council on which method they would prefer to go and what scale we should be aiming to ramp up towards.
Do we have any idea on how much we use, like Dale said?
Yeah, so this last event, we did deplete our entire sand pile that we had. That was, I would estimate 100 cubic yards. And on sand, that's a ton is equivalent to a yard. So yeah, about 100 tons.
So Steve, maybe you could check my math on it after we conclude here today, but I ran a few numbers. What I saw from our Brier website is we got about 28 miles of roadway throughout the whole city. And for 2-lane miles, for 28 miles, Department of Transportation recommends about 600 pounds of salt per 2-lane mile. So if I take that and feather that out for 28 miles of road, assuming we touch every square inch of Brier, that works out to about 8.9 tons of salt, if I'm reading those numbers correctly. So at $135 a ton for salt, it's not an outrageous amount of money, but it's also just a back of the napkin calculation by a guy who doesn't run salt or a highway cleaning for a living. So if you could check that out. And Mr. Mayor, to your question about what we're spending, Paula had given us the budget for year end. I was taking a look at that just before Steve came online today. It looks like we'd spent about $1,452 year to date on snow and ice activities with a budget of $4,000. So we're actually below what we had budgeted. And then for total maintenance of streets and roads, we're about a $63,000 surplus, so to speak, for our total roadway of I guess, salaries, maintenance, and other road activities. So it looks like we got a little something left over, but if we have to buy all that additional equipment in addition to the salt, we certainly would be in excess of what we have budgeted now for snow and ice removal.
Right.
Yeah, Councilmember Moran, if I could speak to that on the 27, 28 miles of road. I think what you got to remember there is you're going to double that. So that's miles. We're talking lane miles. So you would double it since we have two lane roads. We went out and ran just our basic snow route. And as you can see, that's pretty minimal on the map. I think everyone's probably had a chance to see that. But that was, I believe it was 13 and a half lane miles just for this basic snow route. That's going to be Brier Road, 228th, and some of our hills. So that just kind of gives you an idea of there's much more than just the snow map there.
Yeah.
So
What equipment do we have now? Just the 3 sand spreaders?
Yeah, per capita, I'd say we have the most snow equipment around. I know it's outdated, and some of it, is I don't know if it's the most trustworthy. I know we had issues here with the latest snow event with one of the sanders we had to rebuild, but we do have 3. So we have the newest one is the 2017 F250 pickup. That's got a small poly sander on it that uses an auger. That one is good for spreading salt or a mix. When you get the wet, heavy sand in it, it's an electric motor. It struggles a little bit. And then that truck has a plow. And then we have an older flatbed 1-ton Chevrolet truck. I believe that's a 2004. And that one has a steel spreader. That's the one we had problems with. Little small 2.5 yard, but bigger than the pickups. And it has a plow also, and that's a gas spreader. And then we have our older dump truck, 5-yard dump truck that has the steel spreader and a heavier plow on it. But that one's not obviously real good to get into neighborhoods and some of the hilly situations. We prefer the one 4-wheel drive vehicle we have for that.
Steve, I think one of the things that comes to mind, I mean, I think that, yeah, stepping up into the liquids, it definitely adds a number of costs, and any given year, you just don't know what you're going to get. It varies, obviously. But effectivity is kind of something that really comes to mind. And obviously, we also had a culmination. We had a couple people out sick that we just happened to have, the perfect storm, no pun intended on that particular one. But when we look at it, I mean, we just don't have volume of traffic, and some of this is especially the liquids. My understanding is, and from what you had written up and all that, and other things, is that, with these liquid deicers, even if you do some of it or you do it, you've got to be really careful about if you do it before a big snowstorm hits, in the sense of if you've already got stuff on and then the snow goes on top of it, you've lost effectivity. How much difference do you see or would a liquid actually add to versus the process we have in running the plows? I know that people feel that they're going to get perfectly bare roads. That's what the others have. But I was out driving on those days, and outside of the main arterials where there's a lot of traffic, I could hit a road. I was hitting other roads that were not. I wouldn't call them what do we call them? Major roads, anyway, arterial, whatever. Those were not. They were in the same shape we were. And so I'm just wondering, do you see the lift of liquids of providing some kind of capabilities here that we aren't getting with the approach of, look, we get out, we try to plow, we anticipate, I know guys get out there very early when we start getting the snow out there, do the best. You get the problem if the sun comes out, you start getting that sublimation and then it freezes again. Those are just the liquids are even going to still fight that problem. So I'm just kind of curious what your professional take is on that.
Yeah, they're just another tool in the toolbox. The liquid deicers, they definitely help. They're not a miracle. That pre-treatment is probably the best to get out there and try to prevent that bond to the road. Timing around here is always key. So a lot of times we start out with rain, then it transitions into snow. So not a good opportunity. You want it dry to put down that liquid deicer, and you want it to bond to the road, not just waste product and run into our catch basins.
Yeah.
Then the snow plows, when you're on ice, like you're talking about, when it melts and refreezes, those rubber bit snow plows just aren't going to do anything. You know, unless you get warm in the middle of the day where it melts a little bit, you might take another little layer off, but you're not going to get down to the pavement with plowing alone. So that's where the sand comes in with our current operations. But I think you hit it right on the head that the traffic warming it, I think, is going to do more than any of the products you're going to put on it. I mean, if you throw enough chemical on it, you can achieve pavement, but what you're doing to your roads, your equipment, the environment, everything else, if you were to take straight salt, pre-wet it with that calcium chloride, sure, you could melt some snow, but I just don't think it's worth the price you're going to pay for what you're going to do to your equipment, your roads, and the environment.
Thank you.
If we look at historical data, do over like a rolling 5-year average, is there any way to look at how much, how many days, let's say, of snow work we have to do per year? Do we have any sense of that?
Just going off my recollection, not looking at any historical data, it seems like it's, you know, a 2 to 6 day event typically. Once a year, if that. We've had our big events. 07's one that really stuck out to me, that was around for around 15 days, but typically it seems like we 2 to 6 days is what seems to really stick out to me.
Dennis would like to get in there and say something too, by the way.
Please.
Dennis, you're on.
Okay, here I go.
Talk loud.
Sorry. Can you hear me?
Barely.
Barely.
Can you hear me now?
You're gonna have to
Quiet.
talk really loud. Wake up your neighbors.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Better.
Yes, that's better.
Okay, I'll do it. I'm kind of screaming here. Just through some of my own investigating, the EPA on road salt and Deicers, they contaminate drinking water, they kill or endanger wildlife, the increased soil erosion, and the damage to public and private property is caused by the use of these products. From AAA, there is $3 billion in annual damage caused by rust to vehicles from the use of these products. Damage including brake lines, fuel tanks, exhaust systems, and other critical components on all of our vehicles. And from Fish and Wildlife, I got pretty much, it causes oxygen depletion in the streams and rivers and waterways. Not so much if they're moving, but in slow moving streams, it can be a problem. And then what I got from Penn State, it causes a lot of plant damage to our roadways and private properties. And the last thing I got from Peter Chemical Company is that magnesium chloride wreaks havoc on concrete. It gets down into the concrete and starts to break it down and do extensive damage over time. And those are the kind of the downsides I see of rock salt and the de-icing process. Just wanted to add that, and I apologize about my computer, and I'll be getting a new one tomorrow.
No, that's good input. And the other, Steve, you didn't have a picture of a 10,000 gallon tank. So the larger cities that have get the big delivery, I mean, how big of a tank is that?
I would say, well, not without calculating the math here, I'm just trying to go off memory of one that I've dealt with before, and it seemed like it was about 17 feet high, 12-foot diameter, and that was an 8,000 gallon.
The double semi tankers going down the road, each one of those is 5,000 gallons.
Yeah,
That's the size you're talking about.
So it's a huge tank, right?
Full tanker. That's a full truck you'd be taking.
It's 10,000 gallons on a full truck.
Yeah, I mean it's a massive thing, and then just to hold it up and to deal with the secondary containment and all that stuff. It's not a big deal.
I mean, I have to be honest, my take is that I get people being very frustrated. We had, again, that culmination, but I'm not seeing enough of an uplift from all the extra expense we have to go to using the liquid deicers versus the approaches we've taken. Maybe we need to be doing maybe there's an upgrade to a snowplow or something, things like that, to try to make sure, you kind of got to figure if you got 3, always 2 are going, but maybe we can up the odds on that a little bit with some improvements. I feel like I'd rather spend money in those areas where we get the repeated, you put it in, you're putting it into capital equipment versus I just don't see us getting enough lift from in the effectivity and stuff from the liquid materials. And set aside all the good things all the points that Dennis just made about the other ramifications of using some of that stuff.
Yeah, I sure agree with that, Martin, that the insane cost and management of the liquids is just prohibitive for an entity our size.
So to Councilmember Gallagher's point about snow days, we get about, on average, and it's just average, 10 snow days a year, but that doesn't really tell the story because it's how much snow you get on a particular day. And when you look at that, you see bumps of maybe 6, on an extreme, perhaps 9 every so often, right? You get those bumps. But that itself also doesn't tell the story because what we're really talking about here is ice. And that's what caused the problem. And so you look at the extreme temperatures and we don't see those type of temperatures that we saw in December often at all. That was fairly rare to see that combination with snow. So you want to look at how we react to a relatively rare event when we're taking into account the all this equipment and the cost. A couple things that I was, Steve, I know I sent you a note with a number of questions. I had a couple of follow-ups on that. Is one thing I wasn't sure of is when we look at amount that we use, what I didn't have is the application frequency. So I know it's nice to pre-wet if you're using calcium chloride, which by the way is more environmentally friendly than the other options from what I've seen. But you try to pre-wet if you've got dry pavement. Afterwards, what would be the application frequency?
It would be as needed. So kind of depends on what the situation is, how much snow you got, how much compact ice you have. You're trying to burn through and get back down to that bare pavement. So typically what you would do is probably beginning of shift or early in the morning, you would want to make an application. And then when you get into the warmer part of the day, if it does warm up at all between 11 a.m. and 3 p.m. is when you would focus on plowing. So you'd let traffic beat it up all day and try to mix it in and try to break that bond off the road and then let it work and then come back and try to push off any loose material you're able to.
Okay, so in using the totes, we talked about it would take a couple of totes to cover the snow routes. That would be for an application. So you'd have to have several of those if you were to go down that path.
Right. Exactly. So yeah, we would burn through a 250-gallon tote, basically doing our snow route once. And I foresee, a lot of the requests we get are the little neighborhood streets. We got the hills on our snow route, but we even hear from folks that struggle on flat ground. So we get a lot of those requests, and I just don't see using these type of products in those situations.
And then just from a logistical standpoint, our trucks right now, we have the sand spreaders on them, but you can't put the liquid and the sand on the same truck, right? So you'd have to swap out.
Yeah, if you were to incorporate the two together, that would be the pre-wetting system, to where you would adapt the spreader to a pre-wet system with saddle tanks. So yeah, you couldn't be doing the pre-wetting with the spray bar on the back. So need a completely separate truck for that. When you start talking 178 gallons, we talked about was a ton. You really got to think about weight in these tanks too, putting them on the backs of smaller pickups, especially if you have custom flatbeds made out of steel that add quite a bit of weight. So we got to look at the max gross weight of these vehicles can handle also.
And then also the spreader motors, which you indicated would be working pretty hard and possibly subject to burnout, or if not a longevity decrease. If you're doing the mixture of the sand and chemical.
Yeah, that, like I said, that the calcium chloride with the boost, that molasses, it just really sticks to everything. So especially if you're doing like some of the jurisdictions where you're pre-wetting that straight rock salt, it just wreaks havoc on the equipment. It's a bad combination and rots stuff out. I've had personal experience of taking application vehicles to get a tire repaired, and the tire repair shop couldn't get the wheel off. So what are you doing, backing this truck into the salt water daily? And it's like, well, close, we're applying salt with it. And basically they were beating on it with a sledgehammer. The bond was so tight just to get that wheel off. So makes it challenging, and definitely going to speed up the life cycle of our equipment. We start incorporating these products and the mixtures of them, and makes it tough when we do our own maintenance in-house.
I just want to add that we did have a citizen come in right after the whole thing, and he made a great point when he was in. And he was actually there thanking the crew for what they did do, even under the circumstances that they had so few. But his point was, it also gets broken up faster if people will use chains, and he sees very few chains on vehicles anymore. Everybody just wants the street cleared for them so that they can drive their vehicle and not apply chains. And I thought, I hadn't thought of it myself, but when he said it, I went, oh, you know what? You're right. I hardly see anybody use chains anymore. And that helps break it up and make it go away faster.
Yeah, well, and frankly, in the one of the studs, and they all wear down your pavement too. But which is probably see the buses going down when the buses got caught this year. I noticed some of those guys were still having to use chains when most of the road was really bare, and that was, that gets really rough on the roads. But yeah.
And then you got the whole problem of enough people to do it. We're talking
exactly, and that's problem. We talk about Brier being a cut through, but when it snows, we're not a cut through anymore because people don't want those other hills, so they start avoiding us and take the other what would be their snow routes, which bypasses. So yeah, I know it's just.
Hey, Steve, quick question. I mean, I know there's a lot of speculation with this question, but let's say in a perfect world, we're fully staffed, we're not down from 3 to 2 trucks. I know hindsight's 20/20, but what do you think this storm looks like if we are staffed and we do have the equipment in place?
We might have got out there a little quicker and moved some of that snow material off the road a little quicker before it had a chance to turn to the ice. But in the beginning of it, we still had 2 trucks on the road. So I don't know how much quicker it would have been. We would have just added that 3rd truck. Sure, it would have helped a little bit, but not a whole bunch. But once it freezes and turns to that ice, there's not much you can do with the plows. Basically, you're providing the sand for traction at that point.
Thanks, Steve.
Are there commercial trucking firms that we could contract with to do this activity on a per episode basis?
The only ones I'm familiar with is you see a lot of the ones doing the retail spaces and doing the apartment complexes and stuff like that. So that would get into a bidding issue we'd have to work with Paula on. I don't know if there's any of those available on the small works roster that we currently use, but that may be an option. I had talked to Terrace about potentially purchasing product from them, kind of same arrangements with DOT.
Yeah,
that was something they weren't interested in.
I have a relationship with the Terrace mayor and the city administrator, and in the thick of a snowstorm, they're gonna deal with their own streets and their own problems. And they're gonna, if if their vehicles start showing up in our cities and their residents see that and all their streets aren't clean, they're going to be unhappy. I mean, in an ideal world, we would, contract out or get help from a local city. But in the time of any events, they're all focused on keeping their own streets clean, and they're not going to, no matter what we do, they're not going to help us. So we're kind of on our own.
Does that new vehicle with the 5.8 liter Hemi that we're getting come with a snowplow attached to the front?
Better,
Thinking the same thing, Dave.
Well, based on what we've had to do a couple of times because of the shortage of the staff, maybe we should attach the sander to the back of it.
Yeah.
The Chiefs car is plug and play. Can we do it there?
Yeah.
That's the one I was
That's
talking
not
about.
what we're talking
Yeah.
about.
I'm a little slow, David.
That's
I think if we had a proper mayor's vehicle, then we could, like a,
I thought that's what the Chiefs doubled as.
no, I need, I don't have mine yet. So
We'll
There's
have
no
to change your title, Mayor's Relief Snow.
Hot Taurus out there for sale.
yeah.
Then let's not leave the councilman out.
All
Just
right.
a few things, if I
Go
may.
ahead. Go ahead, Val.
So I also did some environmental research, and it really indicates to me that anything involving chloride is something that we should avoid.
Yeah.
A lot of the streams in Brier are leading to important fish habitat, and we need to be really cognizant of that as we are wanting clean roads, but also a healthy fish down the road. So, well, down the stream there. So I think we need to really be thoughtful about that. And the research I read indicates the chlorides are what we should avoid. It does look like those pre-treatments are something that is approved and least dangerous from a fish habitat perspective. Although I do see that would be rather challenging, finding that dry moment before the snow hits where we could actually hit those. And then Steve, question on that, those pre-treatments I assume are liquid and we would need all the equipment related to spreading the liquid.
Yeah, that's when the calibration's most critical. Especially if the humidity gets up, you can cause a slick situation by putting down too heavy of a rate. But yeah, that would be that same spray bar system I was showing. You probably see it in surrounding jurisdictions where you have the lines on the street and trying to prevent that bond ahead of the snow with the pre-treatment. So yeah, calcium chloride, same products used for both anti-icing is what that would be considered, and de-icing would be after the event has already occurred.
Okay.
So if we typically have rain before we have snow, then how do you actually do that?
It's that fine window. Basically, you look for that dry before the snow falls and put it down. It's okay for the pavement to be damp. You just don't want it raining when you're applying. So a lot of times, it's the evening, you're watching it and it's 9-10 o'clock at night. And it's okay. Let's call some staff in. It's go time.
So the research I had indicated that the calcium magnesium acetate and the potassium acetate, which you would use at really cold temperatures that we rarely see here, would be the ones that we would want to look at if we were going to do the pre-treatments. I didn't see any price quotes for those, but I did see all the pricing related to spreading the liquids, and that looks like it's between 12 and 15,000, accounting for travel time and installation. Is that accurate as the back of the envelope?
Yeah, so the other products you mentioned there, not familiar with those. Calcium chloride is the standard used with all the municipalities, and that's what I've used in my past, and what's available on the state contract.
Okay.
So that's the one that's typically used, and like I said, for both pre and post treatments.
Okay. That makes sense, because the price, according to my little chart here, the price about 5 times what it would be to buy just straight up sodium chloride versus these acetate products that are 20 to 25 times the cost. So they're rather expensive, just on a per usage basis, I can only imagine.
Yeah.
Now my second question really pertains to training our drivers, I think. I come from snowy places, and I'm wondering, part of what happens when we only have 2 to 6 true snow day events every year is that people forget how to drive in the snow if they learn to begin with. And I think that we could do something as a municipality that would be really supportive of our citizens, including signage and alerts. We could potentially do something approaching intersections that we know are problematic and put a sign up and say, this intersection might be slippery, slow down. Just because I think that some of what happens is people relax when they are traveling in areas that have been heavily treated with de-icer, and they forget that when they're in a less traveled area, it's dangerous and that they need to slow down and they need to treat the road as though it's icy, even if they can't see it as they're entering an intersection. And so I'm curious if we know where our high sensitivity areas are, what we can do around planning, around communicating that to people, knowing that it's going to happen again and that treating it with chemicals is probably a really expensive endeavor for us. I'm wondering what we can do piecemeal to protect people, make it safer, and communicate better. Maybe that involves a bag of rock ice at the intersection on 228. I don't know, but that's where I'm curious. How many intersections are we talking about? How many really difficult, challenging places do we need to alert people to?
You know, any of them can become slippery. Ice is ice. So, I mean, even at some of the flat intersections, if you're driving too fast for conditions, it could become an issue. Obviously, any of the hilled areas, curved, shaded areas where it doesn't melt or get warm and have an opportunity to clear, those are problematic. You mentioned signs. What I've seen some jurisdictions do is some of those troubled areas, we'll just put watch for ice signs out. And then rather than having those out all year round, you could swap those with do not litter signage or wear your seatbelt during the spring and summer months. So that's one idea. Another one of our main issues, and it was this event, was Vine Road down by Locust Creek. And we ended up closing it because it was just too challenging and police were having too many accidents there. So what some municipalities do is they'll actually pre-stage on some of those hill areas, road closed barricade and other traffic control devices, cones and such, and actually just cable them with a combination padlock to a utility pole or a street sign so they're in place. So anybody could grab those, open the combination, who's authorized, law enforcement, public works, and get those out, deployed, and get the road closed fairly quick. The other problem we have is people just don't take those road closed signs seriously. I've seen them used as sleds. I've seen people just drive around them, think it's up to them when to move them, throw them out of the way. They are a regulatory sign and should be enforced as such. Did that answer all your questions, Valerie?
Yeah, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Just to Val's comments, one thing that's been it's certainly you'll see it one time now. The one on Vine, I think, and the dip on 228. They're probably the most consistent challenges that I think we have. But I've had one. I know, like on 214th where I live, a couple of years ago, 3 years ago maybe, we had a social, and that's the section around from about 36 down that little section of hill. About 4 cars got themselves upside down on, all spun around and on the ice that year. This time where we were really having challenges, that little section of road didn't have a problem. But it really, it's weird sometimes how it forms up, what was the conditions and all that. But yeah, I even remember a kid going too fast on 214th once, and speed and road conditions did not align and all that. But yeah, it's really challenging. But that idea about pre-staging signs, I like that. That's kind of not a bad idea.
So I don't know if everyone's aware, we do currently use some sodium chloride, some rock salt on a real limited scale. So basically we try to stock 1.5 pallets to 2 pallets of 50-pound bags. And so we can mix that in with our sand blend and try to help out the situation. Now, when I talk about it being corrosive, just that little bit of amount we're using, our newest truck, the 2017 Ford I was talking about with that poly spreader that works good for spreading the salt. It has an expensive lift gate that we fought to get that saves our public works employees' backs, and it's rusted in multiple areas just from that limited use. So we try to do everything we can. There's special products put out by a company called Romar that are salt neutralizing products, lubricating products to try to prevent that salt damage, but it's inevitable when you're dealing with rock salt, and especially anything mild steel that it touches.
All right. We've had a lot of information here. I think all of us realize that nothing comes for free, and you know, what we've been doing in the past has, you know, been based on historical experience. Steve obviously has got a lot of experience with streets with our city and in the city he was with before he came to us. I guess I'll let all of us collectively think about this. And, you know, we've gotten a few ideas tonight, but I'm not sure that we're convinced as a body. I don't get the sense that we're going to go and buy an 8,000 gallon tank and we're going to start spreading Deicers and head toward something that's significantly different than what we've been doing in the past. One of the reasons I wanted to do this, because I did want to have a discussion with the whole council about just so that we can, when our citizens do talk to us and about what's been happening, that we can, with some knowledge, respond to their questions. That we are kind of a unique city because we don't have the volumes that some of the other neighboring cities have, which helps eliminate some of the snow. And to go to a situation where we're really going to hit this hard with a lot of these products is hard on the equipment, it's hard on the environment, it's expensive, and sometimes we won't even be using it in a year. So I want to thank Steve for his presentation. And if something comes to your mind, like we got to start doing this, or I just thought of this, please let us know. But I sort of get the general sense from the council that, you know, we're not too far off. We can make some adjustments. Hopefully the next time we have snow, there won't be COVID. That would be a great help. What are the chances of that happening? We'll thank him, and we'll thank our staff for the work that they've done, and we'll move forward. Any last comments?
We restocked on sand yet?
We are. We're fully stocked. We did that next week after the event. Makes it tough though, because they're striking down where we purchase it. So.
Okay.
May I ask, just clarify? So we'll have a council meeting next Tuesday. It'll be a council meeting. Will this be part of the agenda where we'll be expected to make a vote, yay, nay?
Not really.
No.
This is more informational. You know, if there was something that came out of this that would be a budgetary item that we felt like as a council, we're going to do this, we're going to spend the money, we would amend the budget if we would have to, or
right. If
for next year you guys saw, well, we need to do this, we would plug it into the next year's budget. But as far as I'm concerned, we're going to kind of stay the course and learn from this experience and move forward. So I don't think we'll be talking about this again.
Okay.
Fortunately, those NASCAR dryers just won't work, right, Steve?
Yeah.
We can equip every home with one of Elon Musk's flamethrowers. We can.
There we go.
There you go.
Okay, I think that is the end of our agenda. Let me just look.
That's it.
It is.
All right. Well, I want to thank our chief, and I want to thank Steve, and Jennifer's gone, but a lot of helpful information here tonight. And we look forward to seeing you a week from tonight, next Tuesday. Thanks, everybody.
Steve, thanks
Thanks
for
for
all
all
the
your
work.
hard work,
Thank
Steve.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Chief.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Have a great night.
All right. Bye-bye.
Why do we get budget? Just for information?
What do you mean?
I had budget information in my packet.
Oh, yeah, that's just the end of the year stuff.
Okay, not a discussion item, except that I
Yeah.
would be curious about what an expenditure, non-expenditure is. I don't remember.
Good night.
You and I can go over that.
Good night, you two.